So, as I said, they started dropping more bananas for our benefit, I guess, these wonderful workmen. And once we had our bags full of bananas, we took those bananas back in our burlap sacks to the camp and gave them to the people in charge, and they divided these green bananas up among the families, and everybody got some fresh bananas. Now, since they were green, it was decided it would be best to take these bananas and to put them underneath the blankets on the beds to keep them warm and to warm them up, and hopefully that would ripen them up a little bit quicker. And so that was done. But after about 3 days, people got a little impatient, and they decided to heck with it, and they ate the green bananas, and then everybody got the scoots, and the plumbing got a little extra workout. So that's the story about the green bananas. One other story I tell the kids is that I have a white coffee mug sitting on the table, and of course the green banana sitting in the coffee cup, and that kind of keeps their attention, wondering what's that's all about. The coffee mug I have on there is because I do not like milk. I've never liked milk from the day I was born. And in order for my parents to make me drink milk, they used to always have to put a couple of teaspoons of coffee in there to change the color.
Your mom did not breastfeed you.
In any event, one of the things that they used to do for us young kids, the Queen of Holland said, and she was a great humanitarian when it came to children, and that's one of the reasons why she took the 181 people with infants. She wanted to save the infants and bring them into Holland. She wanted all the children to have some milk and some chocolate in the afternoon for a snack, because Holland had lots of cows and lots of chocolate. So about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, all of us young kids were marched into the dining room, and there on these long dining room tables, there were these white mugs, white coffee mugs, filled with milk and chocolate shavings on top. And this was our afternoon treat. Wow. Compliments of Queen Wilhelmina. Well, for somebody who hates milk to begin with, to give me a mug of milk that had been sitting out there for I don't know how long, so it's probably room temperature. I can't drink milk to begin with, and if I do have to, it's got to be ice cold. And this stuff was tepid. Anyhow, in the back of the room was this huge break front, and it had a chest of drawers on the bottom, which had about 9 drawers, and it must have been at least 6 feet wide, and then it goes all the way back against the wall. And on top of it was a hutch. Now, the hutch was not quite as deep as the chest of drawers, and so they brought it up flush in the front. But the back of the hutch didn't touch the wall since it wasn't as deep. So if you're going to imagine the side of it, if you look at the back, there was a space between the back of the hutch and the wall. But the chest touched the wall. So there was this shelf behind the hutch, right? So Rudy would go back there with his cup of milk, and he'd be pretending he's going to be drinking it. And when nobody was looking, I would set my cup or mug behind that hutch and slide it on the top of the chest all the way back as I could. And that would go on day after day. And then after about 12, 13 days, somebody went back there and they were cleaning up. And I guess one of the ladies, in cleaning up the dining room, went to polish this big old wooden break front, and she noticed this terrible odor coming from around that piece of furniture. And as she went to the side and started polishing, the odor got worse, and so she went behind it, and she looked, and she saw all these white cups lined up back there, pulled one out, and got all this sour milk out of there. pulled out one cup after another. And, of course, when the word got out that somebody had put all their milk back there, my mother knew who the culprit was right off the bat. And so I was barred from any future milk breaks, which didn't bother me one bit. So those are just two little recollections. Well, yeah, I was punished. I couldn't go back for any more milk breaks.
I know, but that's... you were happy about it.
So those are two little recollections of, well, as I say, kids will be kids even during times of adversity. And those are two that just come to my mind. The one thing that I wanted to bring up, and I skipped over, was I said when the Nazis told the owners of the ship to call the ship back, and this is a real important part of my presentation when I talk to the schools, and they told the captain, bring the ship back because we need to get it ready for the winter cruise season. Now, here's where this is the significance of the St. Louis tragedy. And that is, if you can imagine, you got this big round table and all these Nazi bigwigs sitting around the table, and Joseph Goebbels gets up and he says to all the Nazi henchmen, gentlemen, you see, we tell the world we don't want the Jews. We want to make Germany Judenrein. We want Germany free of Jews. We're willing to let them go. We even offered them one of our finest ships to get rid of them. We admit we don't want them. But those Western democracies, like the United States and Canada, they don't want them either. But they don't admit it. They're a bunch of hypocrites. There you got the St. Louis with 900 Jews, over 900 Jews sitting off the coast of the United States. The United States doesn't want them. Canada doesn't want them. But they won't admit it. If the rest of the world doesn't care what happens to those 900 Jews on the St. Louis, do you think they're going to care what we do with the rest of Europe's Jews? That's the that's the significance of the St. Louis story. It gave the Nazis the green light for the final solution. That's the significance of the St. Louis story. It gave the Nazis the green light for the final solution.
It is.
And it's a story not too many people know about.
No.
If the rest of the world doesn't care about those 900 Jews on the St. Louis, do you think they care what we do with the rest of Europe's Jews? Gave the Nazis the green light for the final solution.
And they took advantage of it. Wow.
Yep. So anyway, here we are sitting in this camp in High Platte, Rotterdam, right outside of Rotterdam. And on December 7th, 1939, of all days, our quota number came up. And thanks to a second cousin of my future stepfather, Rudy Jacobson, we were able to get the money to buy passage to get from Holland to the United States. So she was married to a well-to-do industrialist in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and he had a job waiting for my dad in his factory. And so my parents bought passage for a ship to take us from Holland to the United States. So we left Holland late January 1940. The war had already started, and we got to the United States February 5th, 1940. And then
where did you land?
We landed in Hoboken, New Jersey, because Ellis Island had already been closed since the war had started. There was no more immigration. So we landed in Hoboken, New Jersey. And then we spent a couple of weeks with my mother's sister and her husband, who had preceded us by a couple of years in New York. And then our sponsor came from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and picked us up. And we went to Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and then that's where we lived. And we rented a bottom half of a duplex. The landlords lived upstairs, and we lived downstairs. And I think the rent was like $35 a month. And my dad made $35 a week working for his relative in a warehouse. And
he was happy.
Yeah, and he worked. He worked 8 hours a day, and an hour each way on the streetcar. So that's a 10-hour day. 6.5 days a week. And so that's where I started grade school. And luckily there was a young girl whose parents also came from Germany, and she came and picked me up and took me to school. I couldn't speak a word of English. Yes and no are the only two words I knew.
What was your language you were speaking? Just one language? Was it
German.
German? I mean, other than German, that was it. You know.
That's it.
How about your sibling? What?
My brother?
Yeah, your brother. He was just with you at this time.
Yeah. Yeah, he was learning German too. I don't think he...
So you went to school. What's the name of the school?
In Milwaukee, Wisconsin. We started out at Bartlett Grade School, Bartlett Avenue Grade School,
Okay.
in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And then she took me to school. Luckily, because I wouldn't have, if I got lost, I wouldn't be able to ask for directions. Then she tells a funny story because one day I'm in school, and
With your brother, I take it.
No, he was too young to go to school.
Oh, he was at that time. Let's see, how old would you have been at that time?
Well, we got here in 1940, so I would have been 7.
7, yeah, you were.
No, I was almost 7.
Okay.
They put me in first grade. I just sat there like a bump on a log because I couldn't understand what was going on. And then the teacher, I guess, called me to the blackboard. And as I walked up the blackboard, she motioned for me to come up. So as I was walking up the blackboard, I accidentally stepped on her toe.
You stepped on what?
Her foot. So she grabbed me by the wrist, and she says to me, now this was all repeated by the girl who took me to school, because apparently the teacher must have told her. And I guess she grabbed me by the wrist and she said, in this country, when you step on somebody's foot, you say, I'm sorry. So I'm looking at her and she's talking to me. I have no clue what she's saying. And she says, how would you like me to step on your foot? Which was a question, right? So by the tone of her voice, I knew it was a question. Teacher asks a question. It's always better to say yes than no, right? So I figured, if the teacher asked me a question, I better say yes. So I said yes. So she steps on my toe. And I start to cry. That's the story.
Oh, that's funny.
So and then they after the semester was over, they decided they better keep me in first grade for another year until I learn English, because there's no sense putting me in second grade since I don't know what's going on. So I spent my 2 years in the first grade.
But you learned English by
Till I learned. Well, I went to summer camp. In the summer of 1940, I went to summer camp. They had a Camp Sidney Cohen, which was by the Federation, Jewish Community Center and Federation. So they had a summer camp, and they sent the refugee children to that summer camp. And I think I must have been there for 6 weeks or something. I don't know. And when you're all among your peers, you learn English pretty fast. If you want food, you got to ask for it or you don't eat. So my mother said by the time I came home from camp, I could speak some English.
Oh, that's good.
So after another year in first grade, I was passed to second grade. So then I think it was in...
Was your family religious at that time? Your mom and dad, did you belong to any temple or...
no.
A Jewish community there at that time?
Yeah, there's a Jewish community in Milwaukee, big one. But my parents didn't have any money, so we couldn't join any temple. But they had a new home club, which was all the refugees. And they used to have services at the new home club in German, I guess. And our family was kind of goofy as far as religion is concerned because my mother's religion, my grandmother's religion rubbed off on my mother. So my mother was fairly religious, which kind of rubbed off on me. And so she had an agreement with her second husband that I was going to be a bar mitzvah. And then they had another child between them, and so the second child, my brother, he was going to be confirmed. And at that point in time, they joined a Reformed synagogue. So I guess you might say they were Reformed, but I was Orthodox. I was going to an Orthodox synagogue. They were going to a Reformed synagogue. So it was kind of a weird situation.
Did Rudy have a bar mitzvah?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah. And that's kind of stuck with me. But then,
and your brother did not. He was confirmed.
Yeah, but then when he went to Israel with his oldest son, and then his oldest son was a bar mitzvah in Israel. And then he went and he became bar mitzvah at the same time. Oh. So he and his oldest son became bar mitzvah.
How neat. Yeah.
Together. So he decided he wanted to be bar mitzvah too. So now, but I don't think he doesn't do much.
Do you remember the Pfister Hotel?
Oh, yeah.
We used to go there. We lived in Chicago, Glenview, and we used to go there on weekends. They always had specials.
Pretty fancy place.
Yeah, it was nice. Yeah. And I was in the advertising business, and I went to Milwaukee because we advertised Schlitz.
You did?
Yeah. I did a lot of advertising. I was with Leo Burnett Company, and we advertised for Schlitz.
Got any stuff left?
Advertisements? Yeah, I do.
Logos?
Yes. Yeah, I do. Yeah. I don't know if they're still in business, Schlitz. I think they're
not in Milwaukee. Somebody, I understand, who was it, bought their rights or something. Some brewery in Cleveland or someplace bought out Schlitz.
Because some neighbors said that they thought they saw it in one of the stores around here.
Yeah, but it's not made by Schlitz in Milwaukee anymore. It's made by somebody else.
But I think the name Schlitz is still on there.
Yeah. But it's not the same beer anymore.
Yeah.
I'm looking for some of the logos with the globe and the belt around the globe. Remember?
Oh, that's
the beer
what I was. Yeah, I went out on ships and we filmed some of that for commercials.
Remember the big globe, and then they had the belt around the globe?
With Schlitz on it.
With Schlitz?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I do model railroading.
Oh.
And what I'm trying to duplicate is, I don't know how familiar you are with Milwaukee, but you know Mater's Restaurant. If you've been to Milwaukee, have you ever eaten at Mater's?
We probably have, I'm sure.
The old German restaurant on 3rd Street.
I'm sure we have, because I like beer. And I think we probably...
Well, Mater's Restaurant on 3rd Street. Directly across the street is
My wife might remember. She remembers every place we ate. Yeah.
Directly across the street is where Schlitz Bottling Company was and where they loaded the railroad cars.
Okay.
There was a railroad yard almost across the street from Mater's and directly
That name is real
north
familiar.
of Usinger Sausage Company. Usinger Sausage Company was almost across the street from Mater's, too. And directly north of Usinger, there was a railroad yard. And that's where they used to load the boxcars with Coors beer, not Coors, Schlitz beer. And I've got the railroad plans and the pictures of that railroad yard, and I'm trying to duplicate it, but I'm having a tough time.
Where do you get the shots or pictures of that?
From the Schlitz has got some. It's got a site where it's got some archives and stuff like that, and they've got pictures of that railroad yard, but it goes back way. The railroad yard, they're hauling barrels on wagons with horses, so you know it goes back to the 1910, before they had trucks.
Yeah.
So I've got but the yard is the same. I mean, the tracks are there, so I know how the tracks are laid out. But I'm for my particular scale, most of the stuff I find is way too big. Because I've got what they call end gauge, which is 1/160th of the inch.
Oh, wow.
So what I got to do is find some of that stuff, and then I think I'm going to have to try to reduce it.
That sounds like fun.
But I haven't got the right colors. There's a Reminisce magazine out, and sometimes they have old advertisements. But I haven't found what I'm looking for. I've got this, I've got the the square thing that says Schlitz on it, the brown one.
Yeah. It's like a rectangle or something.
Yeah, it's kind of a diagonal thing.
Yeah.
But the one that I have trouble finding is the globe.
Well, I'm sure that, so I've got a couple of boxes back there of some of the old ads that I did, and I'm sure they would. That I could get you a picture of, but you probably can find it somewhere of, that logo that they had for a while.
I might just have to go look up Schlitz on the internet.
I don't know, would that help you at all? I could look and find it. But I know which one you're talking about because I was working on it at that time. But anyhow, back to your story. So how did you... Where'd you go from grammar school, and what's the rest of the story for your high school, and when you met your wife and all that stuff, and how you became a dentist?
You want me to go do all that, huh?
Yeah, if you can, sure.
Okay.
Bring it right up to today.
All right.
That's what I'd like you to do.
Okay. Ready?
Ready.
Where?
It's pretty going. I got some of this too.
Oh.
This is kind of fun.
Nah.
Fun for me.
You're going to have to edit this crap out then.
Yeah.
Okay. Like I said, they kept me in first grade for 2 years, and then luckily they let me skip the 5th grade.
Oh.
And I was able to graduate high school at 18 like I was supposed to.
Okay.
And then I went to Marquette University, and I decided that it'd be cheaper to live at home and go to Marquette University. And also, Marquette was the only university that had a dental school in Wisconsin. And since they take about 60% of their dental school class from their own undergraduate school, I decided I'd have a better chance of getting into dental school if I went to Marquette undergraduate. So I went to Marquette University for undergraduate, and after 2 years and 2 summers, I was accepted to dental school in the fall of 1953 and graduated in 1957. And then I went into the Navy for 40 months, and I was discharged.
Were you drafted?
No. No, I got it. Well, I got a deferment because of the Korean War, and I was deferred until I finished dental school, and then I had to go in, and I went into the Navy and spent 3.5 years in the Navy, and I got out December 18th, 1960. And then after I got out
you were a dentist in the Navy?
I was a dentist in the Navy. Yeah. I spent a year in the Naval Air Station in Memphis, Tennessee. And then I spent 2 years with a Seabee battalion. That was, the home base was in Davisville, Rhode Island, which was right out North Kingston, Rhode Island. And we went to various places. We were in North Africa, and we were in Rota, Spain.
Wow. And
we spent some time in Roosevelt Roads, Puerto Rico, and finished up with them in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba.
Wow.
And then my last duty station was up in Maine at a little old, what they call, security group radio station. So that was my tour Navy duty. And
your folks were in Milwaukee all this time?
Well, my mom was in Milwaukee. My stepdad, he passed away in 1952.
Oh. He was not, how old was he? 50.
Yeah, he passed away of a heart attack in 50. So my mom never remarried.
How about your brother? What did he wind up doing?
Oh, my brother, he ended up becoming an attorney. And he practiced law in Milwaukee, Wisconsin until a year ago.
Oh.
And then he retired, moved out to Los Angeles, where he lives now with his 2 sons are out there too.
Okay.
And I have a daughter that lives out there. Seems like all the kids are out there.
Oh. They want you to get out there?
That's about as close as I'm going to get. So then, let's see, December of 1960, I got discharged. Then I went back home for Hanukkah and the holidays. And then I arrived in Colorado January 11th, 1961.
You were single at that time?
Yep. And I just in time for they were having their annual midwinter dental meeting. So I went to the midwinter dental meeting, and I kind of walked around and I talked to a few people about if they knew of any dentist who was looking for an associate, because I'm out here and I'm new and I want to work for somebody for a while until I see where I want to open a practice. And then somebody told me to go see a dentist by the name of Tom Orban, because he's looking for an associate. And that name kind of sounded familiar, so I went over to see him, and we talked for a while. And his dad he and his dad were going to open up this office together, and he had this big office with, I don't know, about 8 operating rooms.
Wow.
And it turns out that his dad was one of the founders of the periodontal movement, gum specialist movement. Well, I was not a trained gum specialist, and he was looking for a gum specialist to go be an associate with him. So after we talked for a while, he said, where did you go to periodontal school? I said, I didn't go to periodontal school. I'm just a general practitioner. He said, well, I can't have you as an associate. So we became friends, and for many years I referred my gum cases to him. in Denver, Colorado. And he practiced there for a long time, and so did I. And when I ended up here in Surprise, Arizona, I find out that he lives about 2 blocks from me. I live in Surprise, and he has a place in Sun City Grand.
Neighbors.
Yeah, so we're neighbors. But anyway, I found a general dentist who was looking for an associate, so I went and I worked for him for about 6 months, and then a Jewish dentist by the name of Sam Lutz suddenly passed away.
How do you spell his last name?
Lutz.
It's just like mine, only with an S.
Yeah, and he died very suddenly, and they needed somebody to buy the practice, and so I went ahead and I bought the practice. I think it was $3,000 in 1961, and that's how I got started. And of course, the equipment was old, and I picked up his patients and his equipment, and I started in 1961, and slowly replaced some of the equipment and found a better location and moved everything, and practiced dentistry until 93 or whatever it was. I don't remember.
Yeah. In Colorado.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, how'd you meet your wife? That's another story.
Oh, we got a lot of stories there.
A lot of stories there? Okay.
Well, yeah. My first wife or this wife?
I don't know if you don't mind, just talking about first one, second one.
Well, my first wife,
wife or kids or whatever you.
Well, in Colorado, I was introduced to my first wife by. I went to a synagogue, and I believe I was introduced to her by the rabbi. I talked to the rabbi. I went to Colorado because I needed to open a practice, and I figure if I'm going to open up a practice, I want to open up a practice. Whether I open it up in Milwaukee or somewhere else, I would like to open one up where I'm going to enjoy living. And I, at that time, really liked to ski, fish. At that time, I used to do some hunting. Colorado was the perfect place.
Yeah.
And as long as I had to open up a practice anyway from scratch, I might as well open one up in Colorado. I didn't know a soul there at the time. And so I moved out to Colorado.
It seemed like a perfect place.
It was.
Wow. Even now.
And so he gave me her name. He said, well, there's a young lady there you might be interested in. So I called her up, and we started dating and went skiing together, and there aren't too many. At that time, there weren't very many Jewish girls that liked to go skiing, that liked the cold weather, that liked to be out in the snow. So she was unusual to that time.
Yeah. So how long were you married before you tried it again?
About 8 years.
Okay. So children? And
I had a daughter.
And what about your extended family back? What?
Oh, well, Emily has a son who's 42. He's career Air Force. And they don't have any kids. He's been married for, let's see, he got married in 1990. In July, so they've been married for a while. And then her daughter got married in 93. And they live surprise.
Oh.
They have 2 boys, 10 and 6. 7, 10 and 7.
Oh.
So those are the 2 grandsons, and I have a granddaughter. But
That's nice.
she's only gonna she'll be a year old in April. My daughter's a late bloomer. She didn't get married until she was 40. I can never remember, but she was about 43 or something like that when
Pretty
she got married.
common nowadays that people certainly do get married older.
Well, she didn't have her first child until she was 44.
Yeah, that's a little unusual. Yeah, at that age. But the child's okay, and she was okay, and
Yeah.
it was fine.
Well, she lost the first one
Oh.
after about, I don't know, 5 months or something. She had a miscarriage. So, but this one seems to be okay.
Good.
So we're going to celebrate her first birthday, and we'll have a baby naming April 8th. She'll be a year old.
That's nice. That first birthday's always an important one.
Yeah, well, the trouble is they're not old enough to remember it. So we're making plans to go out there. We'll have a baby naming around the 10th. So
Sounds good.
we'll get out there. But the youngest grandson, he's born on my stepdad's 100th birthday.
Wow. When was that?
February, let me think, February 7th, 2008.
Oh. Not long ago.
Yeah. Well, 7 years.
Yeah. Okay, we're ready. I think that we got enough about you. I'm going to shut this off.
We didn't finish.
I'm ready whenever you are.
Okay. You'll edit this. You're going to edit this anyway, aren't you?
My son will. Yeah.
Put this in the right place.
Huh?
Okay.
Yeah, I want
Put this in the right place. You put this on the. Okay. Ready?
It's been
On the return trip, as the St. Louis was returning to Europe on the orders of the Hamburg America line after Hitler ordered them to call the St. Louis back, and they ordered the captain to bring the St. Louis back under the pretext that they had to get it ready for the winter cruise season. On that return trip, I found a playmate about my age on the St. Louis, and the 2 of us one afternoon were playing together, and we found this lifeboat. And you have to realize in those days the lifeboats were nothing more than great big oversized wooden rowboat that were covered with canvas. And we saw that the canvas was kind of ajar on one end of this, so we pulled the canvas back a little bit, crawled underneath, and played in the lifeboat like 2 little young boys would play, with our imagination going wild. And we didn't realize that it was time to go in for dinner. So when everybody sat down to eat dinner, here we were missing. And of course the worst was feared. Everybody thought we had fallen overboard since we didn't show up for dinner. And the captain was ready to stop the ship and start a search, when first he decided he was going to start a search of the ship. And he ordered his crew to search the entire ship. And a very astute sailor noticed that there was this lifeboat where the canvas was loose, and he pulled the canvas back, found the 2 of us in there, grabbed us by the earlobes, and marched us back into the dining room. And, of course, we didn't get any dinner that night. Now, ever since that incident's happened, and I tell this to the students when I tell my story, the first question they ask after I'm done is, whatever happened to the little boy you got into so much trouble with when you were playing in this lifeboat? And I told them I don't know. I asked my mother. She said, forget about him. He was probably picked up later. He wasn't in Holland with us in the camp, so he must have been in France or one of the other countries, got picked up and deported, and so he's gone. You might as well forget about him. And finally, I just gave up. Well, in the year 2000, we St. Louis survivors were invited to Canada by an apostolic Christian group called Watchmen for the Nation, who invited the survivors of the St. Louis up there for a reunion so they could personally ask us for forgiveness. They felt it was necessary to do this in order for them to achieve salvation. Jews don't believe in that, but they felt they had to do that to ask for forgiveness for the sins of their ancestors who had refused us asylum into Canada back in 1939 when we were waiting to hear from the Canadian Prime Minister for asylum, since Roosevelt had refused us asylum. Mackenzie King also refused us asylum. In any event, when we were in Canada, they took us around for a tour of Ottawa, the capital, and the first stop was the Parliament buildings, which were 3 buildings arranged in the shape of a U, and in the center was their Freedom Fountain. It had a seat wall around it. They wanted everybody to sit on the seat wall, stand around it for a picture. So they took a picture of that for the newspapers, and then they asked only the survivors to stand on the wall. Everybody else get out of the picture. So my wife got out of the way, and so did another lady, and they bumped into each other. And the other lady said, "Excuse me," to my wife, and then she mentioned to her, "Was your husband on the St. Louis?" And my wife said, "Yes, he was." So she mentioned to her that one of the main reasons she and her husband had come up was he wanted to see if he could find this little boy he got into so much trouble with on the St. Louis when they were hiding in this lifeboat and should have been in the dining hall. When I overheard that, because I was only about 10 feet away, I yelled out, "That was me!" And standing right next to me was my playmate from 65 years ago, whose name at that is now Clark Blutice, and he is a professor of physiology at the University of Tennessee Medical School in Memphis, Tennessee. So, I mean, my knees turned to butter, and the two of us stood there looking at each other like two long-lost brothers and hugging each other. And so the 4 of us were inseparable for the entire weekend. And then, since then, of course, he came out for my 70th birthday, and we've gotten together several times. Wow. And so, in fact, we're planning to see them this coming spring after they get back from a cruise they're on. Okay. So now it's a happy ending. Unfortunately, my mother never found out about this because she passed away before we had this reunion.
Oh, my God. That's an incredible story.
So thanks to this Christian evangelical group, we found each other.